Hello, my name is Hugh Ramus, and this is Cooking Up Crime, where I talk about various true crime things while I eat various foods. Today we're going to be talking about the murder in room 1046. We have an Olive Garden salad, and we have an Olive Garden soup. We also have yogurt with various fruits in it, and we have this fig bar, because I feel like I have not eaten in 4 years. And we have this coffee, because I need it in my life. Okay, murder, room 1046, where a man was found bound, stabbed, and unconscious in his hotel room. January 2nd, 1935. Ronald T. Owen checks into the hotel president in the Power and Light District of Kansas City, Missouri. He requested a one-night stay, which is suspicious, in an interior room, meaning it overlooks a courtyard-type area within the center of the hotel, not so much looking out to the street. I would feel the same way. So he requested that he be several floors up, but he didn't have any luggage. All he had was like his coat, a comb, a toothbrush, that kind of stuff. The staff reported that he was a snazzy dresser. He had an overcoat, but also that he had a cauliflower ear and a scar above his left ear. They reported him as being roughly in his early 20s, and because of the cauliflower ear, they thought that he was a professional boxer or a wrestler because they are common to get cauliflower ear. You get cauliflower ear when you have a lot of impact, a lot of trauma to an ear, and it just becomes like cauliflower. How is it different than broccoli? Whatever. Owen was assigned room 1046 that overlooked the interior courtyard as he requested. Randolph Probst was a bellhop, and he was working with Owen that night. Reported he had no luggage, and they went up to the room, and how Owen was staying at a neighbor hotel, the Mulebach Hotel. I have no idea how to say that. Doesn't matter. But he was complaining because the hotel's prices were too high. Freaking same, so whatever. Just like a little fun fact, the hotel was charging $5 a night, which is roughly $100 a night now. That's not that expensive when you think about it. Would I want to pay that? Probably not, no. Props, the bellhop did end up leaving the floor and went down to the main floor. I'm not sure if he went down with Owen, but he watched Owen leave the hotel that day. Mary Soptic was the maid assigned to the 10th floor, and she recalled that she had knocked on the door that Owen was staying in, 1046. And so she knocked, and she was told to come in, and she was shocked because a woman had been staying in that room the night before, and she didn't expect to see Owen. And Owen said it was fine for her to come in and do her cleaning. And she recalled that he was actually sitting in a chair in the dark with the shades drawn, with a dim lamp on. And she said that he looked worried or afraid about something. Owen got up from the chair, brushed his hair, and asked her to leave the door unlocked because he was expecting a visit from a friend. The doors of this hotel seem to have only locked from the outside. I feel like this is a safety issue, but they only lock from the outside. So when she would leave, she would lock the door behind her to lock the door. But then he would be locked in. I don't understand how these doors work. I really don't. I think she made her rounds at 10 and 4, so that would have been at 10 in the morning, and this is now 4 in the afternoon, where she went to go drop off fresh towels, and she had found the room 1046 unlocked and Owen sitting on the bed fully clothed, and he didn't say anything. She thought maybe he was asleep. There was a note on the nightstand that said, Don, we'll be back in 15 minutes, wait. If anything I've learned from this story, it's that these hotel staff are very nosy. You'll see why. For one, why are you reading somebody's note? It's none of your business. Mind your business, maid. Mary Soptic, the maid, returned the following morning at around 10:30, and she said that she found the door locked, and she initially thought that Owen had left the room because the door could only be locked from the outside, as I said before. So she had assumed that he had left. But she found him in the room. She found him just sitting in the dark, and he didn't say anything, and then the phone rang. He was talking to someone named Don, who just kept saying he wasn't hungry. Quote, "No, Don, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast. No, I'm not hungry." I don't know why. I feel like that was code for something. We don't know who this Don person is right now. We don't, it just seems like code to me. Why would you say, why would someone be trying to be forced to him? I feel like it's drugs. We're going to get into that. Owen did speak to her about her job and about the people who lived in the hotel, people who stayed in the hotel, and stuff like that. He had restated his statement about the Mulebach Hotel being too expensive. My ferret is eating, and you can probably hear him. He's eating dinner with me. How sweet. But he's not going to edit around his eating, whereas I am. She then took the dirty towels of the room and then left. At 4 p.m., Mary Soptic returned to the hotel room to deliver the fresh towels. I don't know if this hotel worked in a way that, people didn't shower from 10 to 4, but sometimes you gotta take a shower, so I don't know. I guess you'd just be out of luck at that point. She had knocked on the door because it was locked. There was 2 people in the room, and a voice that was noticeably deep, so I'm guessing deeper than Owen's, had said, "No, we don't need fresh towels right now." But But suspicious, she had taken all the towels out of the room that morning, so they needed towels, but they didn't have any because she took them. She knows. There was a Jean Owen staying in room 1048 that checked in that day. She's unrelated to this other Ronald T. Owen. It's just a coincidence they have the same last name, or is it? She had claimed that she was in town to see her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend came and stayed the night with her at the hotel so she didn't have to drive back to her home, which was wherever, overnight, and so she could drive in the morning. And she had reported that there was a lot of men and women yelling profanity that night before. Charles Blocker was the elevator operator. Blocker. It doesn't matter. And he had reported that there was a loud party in room 1055, which is close to 1046 and 1048. So we're just keeping an open mind. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible. It's possible that Jean Owen heard 1055, but it's also possible that Charles Blocker heard 1046. So keep your options open, people. There was a known prostitute that was known to visit the hotel and conduct her business in the rooms of this hotel. She had a regular client who operated out of 1046, but she had been instructed to go to 1026, and she had told Blocker how it was odd because he was normally in 1046 and now he was in 1026. But then she couldn't find him and then got aggravated that she couldn't find him and left. Here's my prostitute theory. You ready? What if her client in 1046 wanted the accompaniment of a man instead of her that day, and Owen fit the bill? You know what I mean? Keep your options open, people. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking. I didn't read it anywhere. Allegedly. Don't come for me. But that's just like what I kind of thought was about prostitution. You know what I mean? Because she's already doing her business all over the place. Why can't somebody else come in and do their business? You know? It's like when you got an office building. You got different people in there. So Robert Lane was just a citizen, and he had reported that night he had picked up a person who looked like he had been attacked, and the man had assumed that Lane was a taxi and had called him, and he was like, can you take me to where the taxis usually are for overnight things? Because taxis, from what I gather, I've never lived in a big city, so I have no idea, but I feel like taxis would gather in certain areas for like dead periods, so like overnight, and therefore he was wondering where, like, you would have to go to them at that point, I feel like. And so Lane remembered dropping him off at an intersection where all the taxis were. And the man honking the horn of a taxi, and then a man runs out of a nearby restaurant and then gets in his taxi and then drives him away. I'm assuming that's what happens when people have their windows down, the doors open. It's just a weird time, 1935. January 4th. At 7 a.m., Della Ferguson was a scoreboard operator. She could basically see all of the phones that were being used, and she saw that 1046's phone was off the hook. She had sent props from the bellhop before to go check on it, and he had knocked on the door. The door had a do not disturb sign on it, which is prostitute theory. Remember. He basically knocked on the door. A voice from inside said that he could enter the room, but it was locked. And then he knocked again, and the voice inside said, turn on the light. And he was like, the door's locked, bud, can't get in. And he knocked again, and they were like, come in. And he was like, hang up the phone. Man, quit being complicated. At 8:30 a.m., so an hour and a half later, the phone was still off the hook. And so she had sent Harold Pike, who minds his own business. He goes to room 1046. There's a do not disturb sign still on the door, but the door is locked. It's unlocked. There's a naked man sitting on the bed, and he walks in, hangs up the phone, and then walks out, closes the door behind him. He minds his own business. You know what I mean? But also, prostitute theory. Remember. The prostitute theory. You heard it here first, kids. At 10:30 a.m., another switchboard operator had noticed that the phone in 1046 was again off of the hook, and so props was sent again, but this time he was smart. The door had a do not disturb sign still on it. He knocked. It was locked. No one answered. He had a key this time. Opened the door. Found Owen on his hands and knees. His head was bloody. There was blood all over the walls, and there was blood all over the bathroom. Props then went down to the lobby, asked for the assistant manager. They went back up to the room, but they could only open the door for 6 inches because Owen had fallen in front of it, and they couldn't move him. So then they called the doctor and then called the police. Once they were in, Owen went and sat on the edge of the bathtub. The doctor concluded that Owen had been bound with a cord around his neck, wrists, and ankles, and he had suffered several stab wounds, one puncturing his lung, various skull fractures, and bruising as a result from the cords. And this is when Props noticed that there was blood splatter all over the ceiling, too. Olives kind of taste like formaldehyde. Has anyone noticed that? Is that like just some of them? Some of them. You know what I mean? The doctor had asked who attacked Owen. Owen had said nobody because Owen's not a snitch. The doctor asked Owen if he was trying to kill himself. He said no. Owen had stated that he had hit his head on the bathtub, and then shortly after this testament, he passed out and was sent to a local hospital. At the hospital, Owen actually died shortly after midnight of January 5th. How sad. You do suspicious things, you get caught. You know what I mean? So Jean Owen was suspicious, according to the police, because they had the same last name and she was staying so close to him. But she was shortly ruled out by the police because she literally did not know who he was. So there was a man sometimes noted to be like with Owen in the lobby, and workers had said that the two had been acting very strange, but nobody really like thought otherwise because a prostitute comes in and out and just does her work there, and like it's like in the, I don't know, it's just a weird place I guess people go. Owen's body actually remained in the funeral parlor for 2 months because nobody claimed him. Nobody claimed to know him. Nobody claimed an identity for him. He was just kind of like a John Doe, but he was Ronald T. Owen. The doctor had concluded that his injuries had probably been inflicted around 4 to 5 a.m. But this is also 1935, so like what do they really know about forensics? You know what I mean? Not to come for them in 1935. They were doing the darndest. They were doing the best. The hotel room really left the police at a dead end because there was no evidence really. There was no remaining weapons. The cord used to bound Owen was not found. There was like a hairpin and like an unsmoked cigarette, and then fingerprints on the phone indicating that that the police thought it was a woman. But remember that the bellhop had Harold Pike touch the phone, but then it was off the hook again. So we don't know what happened. You know what I mean? The fingerprints were run and they didn't match Owen or anybody in the hotel staff. So suspicious beans. I just ate a pepper. My mouth is on fire. Hold on. Put this away. Take it away. We're off to soup now. The police began to suspect that Ronald T. Owen was an alias because there was no next of kin. And then his fingerprints were sent to the FBI for further investigation. I feel like the FBI was like a baby at this point. I don't even think the FBI was like the FBI at this point. So a woman had called the Hotel Clinton and asked what Ronald T. Owen looked like. And she had claimed that he had lived in Clinton, which was 50 miles southeast of Kansas City, Missouri. Lane, the man that picked up that man to take him to a taxi, actually went and looked at Owen's body and said that this was the man that he had picked up that night. But the hotel staff did never recall seeing Owen leave that night for him to have been picked up by Lane on the street. So there was a couple of times where Owen was spotted outside with 2 women visiting liquor places. I don't know if these are bars or if these were like town criers. I don't know. There was many leads being thrown at the police and many suggestions of who the identity of the man was, but none really stuck. They were all kind of like ruled out pretty fast because there was no evidence to support what they said. For instance, a man had identified Owen as being his cousin, but then his sister was like, this cousin died 5 years ago, like get with him. Tony Bernardi was a promoter for wrestling and claimed that Owen had asked him for promotion to be a wrestler, and remember he has cauliflower ear, remember? Tony Bernardi, I don't know if it's a man or woman, had directed him to another promoter, and that promoter did not recall Owen being the man that they spoke to. After a few days of Owen's death, there were 2 other murders that the police kind of got sidetracked by, and so Owen's case was kind of put on the back burner, unfortunately. So there's kind of like, I don't know if we have this now, but there are apparently paupers' graves, and there are like formal funerals. Owen was supposed to be buried in Potter's Field, which was apparently a pauper's grave. I don't know what that means. An anonymous man had called and had paid for him to have a proper formal funeral in which flowers were delivered with a note that said, "Love forever, Louise." It's Louise. I don't know if that's Louise or just a different way of spelling Louis. I'm assuming Louise. The man on the phone had also stated that Owen was going to be buried closer to his sister. I don't know if that meant Owen's sister or the man's sister, but the man on the phone did say cheaters usually get what's coming to them, which we'll get into a theory later about, you know what I mean? The flowers were actually pink roses, just an FYI. It was called like an American Dream, an American something, American Beauty rose, and they were like pink in color, so we're just gonna call them pink roses, but they're not important anyway. The person who called the florist to have the flowers ordered and the person who called the people, whoever were coordinating the man's burial, both had placed calls to pay phones, and nobody really knows if they were the same person either, because it was a man who called, and then Louise is a woman's name, unless it's Louis, which ties into the prostitute theory. Just saying, you heard it here first, kids. What is just really sad is that the only attendants of Owen's funeral was detectives and the minister who like did the funeral, and that's kind of sad. But detectives did actually watch his grave for a couple of days after that to see if there were any mourners coming, but no one ever came. So after his funeral, a woman had actually called the Kansas City Journal-Post stating that their running that he was buried in a pauper's grave was incorrect. So she was like, "You got the wrong guy, kids. He didn't get no pauper's grave." His body remained unidentified for a year and a half before the police got a call from a Ruby Ogletree, a woman from Alabama who was claiming that she had seen a picture of Ronald T. Owen and claimed that the scar above his ear was the same as her son's, Artemis Ogletree. What a lovely name. Ruby had not seen her son Artemis since 1934, and she had received the article in American Weekly by her friend, and both of them noticed the similarities between her son and this man. And it has been a year. People can change a lot in a year, so you don't really know. You can gain 100 pounds, you can lose 50, you know what I mean? Artemis Ogletree was born in Florida in 1915 or 1916, and he was reportedly 19 years old at the time of his death, which is kind of suspicious. I had read something that people had said he was in his early 20s. I had watched a video that said that someone had thought that he was almost 30 or in his 30s. So poor boy being 19 and looking this old. You know what I mean? His scar on over his left ear, it was a result of hot grease in his childhood. In 1934, Ogletree had left Birmingham, Alabama to hitchhike to California, and he stayed in contact with his family via letters, and his family had wired him money to sustain himself. How luxurious. While Artemis was gone, Ruby had received 2 letters, one stating that Artemis was in Chicago, and another that he was going to Europe from New York, and then a third letter was from the ship saying that the ship was leaving currently, and then a call had been made that said that Artemis had married a wealthy woman and was now living in Cairo, Egypt. However, all of this happened after Artemis died. So what's the truth? The letters were actually typed, and Artemis could not type, didn't know how to type. I don't know why that's important information, because you can learn to type. Also, it's not hard. They got the letters on the keys, you know what I mean? And the letters used slang that Artemis was not known to use, so it was just kind of like a dialect that he wasn't using. So his mom was like, "I don't think this is my kid." But also, like, people like can change and like get new ways of speaking. They can learn new skills. You know, life's amazing. You can do so many things. Oh, I forgot. The caller had said that Artemis had saved his life and had lost his thumb in the fight, and that Artemis could no longer type out letters because he had lost a thumb. I use my thumb not that often when I type, maybe to hit the space bar, but I don't understand why a thumb is that important, but it doesn't. It's just suspicious beings all over the place. The phone call from the man was in Memphis, Tennessee, which is important for something later. Ruby had noted that the man on the phone was talking wild and irrational, but he had first-hand knowledge of Artemis, so she kind of trusted him. She gave his name to the police and the FBI, but his name was never publicly released. Also, the police, the FBI, and the American consulate in Egypt could not find Artemis at all. But he was also using various different names. So like at the hotel president, he was using Ronald T. Owens. But then at the Mulebog Hotel, he was using something like Eugene Scott or something weird like that. So it's like using different names and aliases is kind of like his thing. So like means nothing that an Artemis Ogletree was not, you know what I mean? I don't know why people were on shipping records, but no shipping record had ever had Artemis Ogletree's name on it or like any of his known aliases. So they're kind of ruling out the fact that he may have left the country, even though he supposedly left the country to go to Europe, and also he lived in Cairo, Egypt. Because of Ruby's involvement, the police were actually able to link a name at the St. Regis Hotel, which Artemis had stayed at as well. They were able to decipher that, and he had stayed there with an unnamed man. Back to the prostitute theory is what I'm telling you. This is why the Memphis, Tennessee was kind of important. A Joseph Martin was arrested in 1937 in New York for killing a man and then shipping his body to Memphis, Tennessee. And the man he killed was actually a man he was staying with, so that's kind of like the same thing, you know what I mean? So like maybe like the caller from Memphis was like the receiver of dead bodies, and then he was responsible for like taking care of it afterwards, you know what I mean? Like if this was a business. Joseph Martin's handwriting actually matched the letters that Ruby was receiving, and he also was known to use a alias of Donald Kelso. And if you remember, Don was the name of the man that Ogletree, I'm getting lost in all these names, names, that Ogletree was supposedly with a Don. Despite all of this kind of like linking Donald Kelso to like the murder, he was never charged. In 2003 or 2004, a historian in Kansas City, John Horner, had talked to somebody who had said they were going through the belongings of a dead relative, an elderly dead relative, and that this person had a shoebox full of the newspaper clippings about the Ogletree case, and also an item that the newspaper clippings had mentioned. The shoebox contained this item, but it was never revealed what the item was, and the person never gave their name either. So who are they? You know what I mean? Like, they could be making it up. Forget them. Organized crime has also been considered in this case, but there's not really any like big evidence besides the fact that Don is a frequent name used in the mafia and other organized crime families, and no other suspect besides Artemis Ogletree has been investigated as thoroughly. So we have no idea who this person is. But that was the case of the murder in room 1046 of Ronald T. Owens, aka Eugene Scott, aka Artemis Ogletree. What a lovely name. Wish that was my name. So yeah, this was episode 3 of Cooking Up Crime. I think. Episode 3? I'm already forgetting. I've been doing this for 2 weeks and I'm slipping. So that was the case. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please feel free to subscribe. Please feel free to like the video. If you didn't like it and you hate everything about it, please feel free to dislike it as well. And tell me how much you hate it in the comments. Am I chewing too loudly? Is my face gross? Do I look odd? Do you hate the background? Forget you. The background's amazing. I will be doing these crime videos every week. I would like to do it on Thursdays this week. I was kind of slipping because I had finals, but such is life. Anyway, I hope you have an amazing day at whatever time and whatever place, under any circumstances that you're watching this video, and I will see you next time. Thanks.